We are going to talk about the Timberwolves. Britt, you covered the Timberwolves for a long time. Now,
Since
is it
91.
so much bad? Is it so much bad GMing or is it bad ownership? How did we get to this point where the Timberwolves were a young and exciting team, and now they're just kind of like a joke that might be a young and exciting team?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at the history of the Timberwolves, it's really all about Kevin Garnett or not about Kevin Garnett. They've been a franchise about 25 years now, and when Kevin Garnett has not been on that team, they've never won more than 29 games. That's just a phenomenal statistic in an 82-game season. They have always lost at least 53 games when they don't have Kevin Garnett on the roster. Now, the reasons for that are, a myriad. They went with a win-first coach right out of the chute when they were an expansion team in Bill Musselman, who didn't develop young players. They played really hard and won 29 games. Their high watermark actually was their second year. And then after that, they just made a lot of bad personnel decisions. Some really bad coaches, Jimmy Rogers, Sidney Lowe, Bill Blair. I mean, the names just trip out of guys who were, career assistants for a reason. And then after that, when KG left, Kevin McHale had a plan that was, pound the paint in the low post. Kevin Love and Al Jefferson together. Jefferson as the Garnett replacement. And it just didn't work. I mean, the concrete evidence is, once again, they failed to produce. And there was also the Joe Smith signing that was illegal and robbed them of a number of draft choices. There were some terrible draft choices that were made. William Avery with the 14th overall pick from Duke because he sunk a bunch of threes in a row at a tryout that Flip Saunders saw. So, a lot of things, Udi Ebe, and just guys left and right, bad draft choices. So, it's one of those situations where right now I would have to say that this is the most hopeful Timberwolves fans have a right to be since Kevin Garnett left the team. And it remains to be seen once again, but they do have some intriguing pieces, and they are starting to put pieces together that are more than just intriguing pieces. They may even be pieces that fit together.
Speaking of intriguing pieces, irrationally, I was a huge Isaiah Ryder fan growing up, and I know that you covered him pretty closely. What was the reason that Isaiah Ryder didn't fit or didn't make it, aside from the obvious Isaiah Ryder-ness?
Well, I mean, athletically, the guy was amazing. He was more than just a slam dunker. He was a phenomenal leaper, but he was a great passer. He was a pretty good shooter. He could play defense when he wanted to. He just was, a punk at the end of the day. I mean, somebody who couldn't accept losing very well, wasn't a very good team player. As one of the guys who I defended him in town because a lot of writers I thought were criticizing him on racial grounds. They were saying that he was throwing gang signs in the middle of the game, stuff like that. Paul Pierce 10 years before it happened. So, unfortunately, defending Isaiah Ryder really wasn't a good long-term proposition, but at the time it made sense. And he was a phenomenal player. He just wasn't a good team player. He began kicking people and women in the stomach at the Mall of America, and just all kinds of you couldn't make it up. Some of it. So it was Isaiah Ryder. I mean, he was one of a kind. They finally got rid of him for next to nothing. I think that was James Robertson or something. James Robinson, the guy who was an incredible streak shooter, but couldn't do anything else. And everybody was happy to see him go by the time he finally left.
Okay. The big key, the one constant in all of this, whether they're good with Kevin Garnett or they're bad without him, has been Glenn Taylor. He showed that he is willing to spend when he gave KG that incredible contract. By all reports, he was willing to max out Stephon Marbury to make him as happy as possible. He's been willing to spend. He's been willing to promise money under the table to players. Is he just really bad at owning a team, or what is it keeping him from wanting to spend and putting a winner out there?
Well, I think part of it is loyalty. He has stayed loyal to people. He stayed loyal to Kevin McHale for far, far too long. He has an affinity for treating his basketball team like a family business. Understand that this guy, I think is still one of the 250th, the richest people. I think he's in the 240s according to Forbes, most recent Forbes thing that came out. And his main business is printing wedding invitations. So you got to figure a guy who's in that kind of a business, such a detailed business, making that kind of money, can't be that bad of a businessman in that sense. And he was also a pretty powerful politician. He was served in the Minnesota legislature for a while. But when it comes to running a team, I think like a lot of guys, he's a little bit starstruck. He's fond of hugging his players to the point where you could tell they're feeling a little uncomfortable about it as it happens. And, and one thing I will say for Glenn Taylor, and you mentioned it, is that he is willing to put up the money. The one you didn't mention that I always consider the most amazing amount of money Glenn Taylor spent was when he put $14 million on the table for Latrell Sprewell when he was already over the luxury limit, which meant that Sprewell cost $28 million that year. And then when Sprewell pulled this, I got to feed my family in 3 years at $21 million wasn't enough. And then just the idea that after paying this guy the equivalent of $28 million, paying Sprewell $14 million, and then having the team that was the favorite to win the ring the next year, cleaved in half because Sprewell wouldn't accept $21 million for 3 years, and then he wound up not playing the next, he was out of the league after that. So obviously Taylor was even overpaying him there, and his team still split apart. So, the Wolves' history is very, very sordid and sad for anybody who watches it for any period of time. We could go on and on with these tales of woe, but Sprewell's "I got to feed my family" ranks right up there with Christian Laettner sitting in a locker room and pointing over the names of different names over the stalls and going, "Loser, loser, loser, loser," and then pointing to himself and saying, "Winner." It's just it's the Timberwolves experience. Fantastic.